Just over a week on from the capture of Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro, the US is turning up the pressure on Maduro's key ally, Cuba. The communist-run island has endured decades of punishing US sanctions and is heavily dependent on financial assistance from Venezuela. Donald Trump wrote on social media, "There will be no more oil or money going to Cuba. Zero. I strongly suggest they make a deal before it's too late." Cuba's foreign minister hit back, saying law and justice are on Cuba's side. The US is behaving like a criminal and uncontrolled hegemon that threatens peace and security not only in Cuba and this hemisphere, but throughout the entire world. Well, for more on this story, we are joined by William LeoGrande, a specialist in Latin American politics and US foreign policy at American University in Washington, D.C. Thank you so much for joining us here on DW. Venezuela was Cuba's largest oil supplier last year. Can the US prevent Cuba from accessing it?
They can. If the Venezuelan government itself doesn't agree to go along with the demand that they cut off oil to Cuba, the U.S. Navy can simply interdict the tankers that are going between the two countries, as they have done repeatedly over the last week.
And who could Cuba turn to as an alternative then?
Well, Mexico has been right up there with Venezuela as a major supplier of oil to Cuba. Russia supplies some, and Cuba has friends around the world that are oil-producing countries that haven't been providing cheap oil recently, but they could be. Countries like Angola, Algeria, and even Trinidad Tobago in the Caribbean.
So some potential options there, but Trump says that Cuba should make a deal with the US before it's too late. What kind of deal could he want?
Well, that's not clear, because this is the first we've really heard of a willingness on the part of the Trump administration to have some kind of a dialogue and make some kind of a deal with Cuba. Thus far, in the past year, we've had no diplomatic dialogue whatsoever with the Cubans. I think the Cubans would be interested in hearing the terms of the deal that the president has in mind, and hopefully he'll spell those out over the course of the next few days or so.
But I mean, is something like a US military intervention, similar to Venezuela's, actually thinkable in Cuba?
I don't really think so. Grabbing and kidnapping the Cuban president wouldn't really change the Cuban regime at all. And the Cuban president is not under indictment for anything in the United States, so the legality of it would be very tenuous. What the United States could do, though, is similar to what it's been doing to Venezuela, or threatening to do to Venezuela, which is create a kind of naval quarantine or blockade to prevent oil from going in or out. And if the United States were to prevent any oil from getting into Cuba, that would really starve the nation, and it would force the government to come to some kind of terms.
Okay, and let's talk about Venezuela's key allies and potentially what could happen with Cuba, because Russia and China stayed mostly silent after Trump's Venezuela action. Would that be the same if he intervened in Cuba?
Well, they would certainly denounce it, as they have denounced the abduction of Maduro. But there's really, frankly, nothing that they could do about it. They couldn't counter the United States militarily here in the Western Hemisphere. It's too far. It's too far away for them to be able to do anything about it. They might try to take it to the United Nations or something like that, demand a Security Council meeting, but the United States has a veto in the Security Council. So they really don't have any good options.
Well, let's talk big picture. What overall vision for the Western Hemisphere do you see in Trump's recent actions?
Well, I think it's very clear that he sees the Western Hemisphere as the sphere of influence of the United States. His new corollary to the Monroe Doctrine, his Trump corollary, or as he likes to call it, the Don-Roe Doctrine, says that the United States has to be preeminent or even predominant in the Western Hemisphere, and that means all of the other countries in this half of the world have to be friends of, or at least compliant with, the United States. And you can see it not only in his attitude toward Venezuela and Cuba, but his demand that Canada join the Union as the 51st state and his demand that Denmark surrender Greenland.
William LeoGrande from American University, thank you so much for all of your analysis there.
Thank you.